It's the agenda here on the Blood Red channel. I'm Guy Clarke. Welcome along with silly season well underway in the rumour mill in full swing. Here on Blood Red, we're going to do our best to add to it. Alongside myself, Guy Clarke, is Blood Red's Edward Kay, and we're going to discuss those players whose contracts are ticking down, with Liverpool always as resourceful as ever in the transfer window. Ed, hope you're well, and I have to say I'm looking forward to getting into this. Yourself?
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting topic. You know, Klopp's he's delved into the free transfer market with varying degrees of success so far. You know, the outstanding one's obviously Joe Matip coming from Schalke, and he's become just a stalwart of the team alongside Van Dijk, especially this last season when he's not had so many injuries. And you know, you look at some of the other free signings. You know, a couple of keepers. I think Adrian. He provided some decent backup, but he's had some poor performances. And I think another one was Andy Lonergan. I don't think he played a game for the team. And then I think his only other free signing was Alexander Meninga from Augsburg, and he again didn't feature before he retired. So yeah, it's been a bit of a mixed bag in the free transfer market. But if he chooses to go in again, then hopefully he gets it right.
Well, historically, you mentioned Matip there. I mean, historically, it has been something that's worked wonders for Liverpool, really. I mean, you think of the great sides Houllier built, Marcus Barble and Gary McAllister, two players who came in on free transfers of this current crop, James Milner and Joel Matip. So it's always kind of something that Liverpool seem to be scanning, but more often than not, it's actually Liverpool's players, it seems, those going on free transfers as opposed to bring them in more recent years.
Yeah, you look at obviously Wijnaldum leaving because they weren't able to agree on a contract for him. Obviously, that's not turned out particularly well for him. I would imagine probably him and everyone at the club is probably still wishing we managed to sort that one out. And then obviously you're looking at Salah now running down his contract. Is he going to end up leaving on a free? But yeah, it's we've not dipped into the free transfer market too much of late, but I think there is a few interesting opportunities coming up this summer that the club might choose to take a chance on.
Yeah, we're going to discuss a few options then, and I'll leave it open to you, Ed, as well, to throw a couple of names in as well. But first one up, I mean, probably looks the most unlikely, but is a player who has been linked with Liverpool over the last couple of years. It always felt kind of as games from the agent, and I think actually had his heart staying on Juventus. It is Argentina's Paulo Dybala, who looks set to stay in Serie A, most likely will sign for Inter Milan. But he's a guy, when you look at Liverpool's forward line with Salah, Firmino and Mane, with all of their contracts running down, what would your take have been if Liverpool did look at that one and say, actually, that is a deal that would suit the short-term needs?
I think there was a time when I was really interested in seeing Dybala at Liverpool, but I think that's been and gone. And the way the side's gone now with Klopp, you know, there isn't really room for, you know, you look at what went wrong at PSG, where they've got three lads up top who aren't going to track back. There isn't really room for that at Liverpool, and I'm not sure Dybala's really got the work ethic required. You know, he's the wrong side of 26, where a lot of Liverpool's recruitment seems to be sort of based around being either, you know, younger than 26 or over. He's 28, and he's been a good play for Juventus, but I hesitate to read too much into anybody who's done that well in the Serie A, really, because, you know, you look at Lukaku, he made his name in the Premier League all right, but then he struggled, went to Inter Milan, went to the Serie A, lit it up, won the Serie A, he's come back and he struggled again. So I do think it's a bit of a weaker league, and he's been a good, like I say, he's been a good player for Juventus, but he's never exactly set the Serie A light. He's not really done much in Europe, and I do think the time when Liverpool would have been looking at Paulo Dybala has probably been and gone now.
He also, as you say there, for the age profile, he is 28. You would kind of say he's in the prime of his career, but it's one of those, isn't it, where sometimes players do perform better far earlier in their career. I remember Juventus reaching Champions League finals in 2015 and 2017, and I remember at the time seeing those European runs and thinking, this is a guy who is going to be a key player within European football. I think he's still done well in Serie A, as you say, but I think though that era was probably his peak, and when you consider 2017 was 5 years ago now, and that was sort of 21, 23 when those years were for him. he's had a number of injuries, and like you, even if he wasn't looking destined to head to Inter Milan, which at the moment sort of seems to be the rumblings around him, still not sure that Liverpool would really entertain it. What about then Ousmane Dembele from Barcelona? Now, this one's been very strange indeed. Not only the fee went for in the first place, but in terms of the last year, Barcelona, of course, in this situation with being able to register players or not. In January, they seem to be sorting out the decks to offer new contracts out, and Dembele point blank refused to sign a new contract. Since then, seems to have gone back on it, but Barcelona again in a different position, and doesn't look at the moment as though they're going to be able to afford to offer him fresh terms with wanting to register the new players that they're going to have. He's a wide forward. He has got a bit of a ability to get goals, but more of a habit of injuries. What's your take?
If it wasn't for the injury record, I think this one probably would be the most likely, because he is the right side of 26. He's still only 25. He does operate on the wing. He could come in as potentially backup or even a replacement for Salah and operate in sort of a similar manner. Obviously, like I say, he's nowhere near got the reputation for goals, and Liverpool, if Salah left, would have to probably make up the goals elsewhere if they went for Dembele to replace him. But I do think he more fits the profile of a Jurgen Klopp forward. You know, he's pacey, not so much one for tracking back, but he's good off both feet. And like I say, it's been a weird one for him at Barcelona. Obviously, the club's going through some real turmoil at the moment. This seems to be sort of coming through the other side of it, and he has actually been part of that this season. He's like I say, struggled with injuries before that, not really got going, but he's had a decent-ish season for them this year. And like you say, if it wasn't for the injury record, I do think I could see Liverpool maybe going after him. But I think he's been linked with Chelsea, if I'm right, at the moment, most strongly. So we might be seeing him in the Premier League, but maybe not in a red shirt.
Yeah, he obviously probably had the most productive period of his career at Borussia Dortmund under Thomas Tuchel. I think that's where a lot of the speculation probably emanates from regarding Chelsea. But on Dembele, I suppose he wouldn't have to do an awful lot more to endear himself to Liverpool fans, given that miss he had in the Nou Camp back in 2019 in stoppage time.
Yeah, I wasn't sure where you were going with that one for a second, but I've forgotten about that. Yeah, do you know? I remember that. My dad turned to me because we obviously went to the second leg. It was one of the best nights of my life, and I remember my dad turning to me, and obviously I would have been 4-0, and he was like, "That's a big miss." That, and I think if he'd have scored that, we probably wouldn't have made the trip from Leeds to Anfield, and we would have missed out in the end. But yeah, like you say, he's already fond memories of that miss.
Yeah, exactly. Already a cop favourite, isn't he, for that miss? As you say, kept the tie alive, and as you say, we don't need to go into what happened next. We all know what happened at Anfield in the semi-final second leg in that game. Okay, next one on the list is Corentin Tolisso, who I think I'm right in saying when he arrived at Bayern Munich was their club record signing. They're now happy to let him go on a free transfer this summer. There doesn't really seem to be a nailed-on destination for him to go to. We mentioned with Dybala, Inter Milan, with Dembele, Chelsea have been very strongly linked. Now, I suppose when you factor in Naby Keita and Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain's situations, what do you think on this one? Would this be a deal worth doing? Again, the caveat, he's had a fair few injuries, but I suppose anyone who's coming in on a free, there's going to be a reason, certainly in prime years of their career, that they're going on a free transfer.
Yeah, well, going back to the whole injuries and the free transfer thing, I mean, like I said, Liverpool's most successful free transfer, barring obviously James Milner in recent years, has been Joel Matip, but they signed him knowing he had a poor injury record. That injury record continued, and he's only really had his first full, proper, not particularly injury-riddled season this year, and he's obviously been fantastic. But Tolisso is another interesting one because we still haven't replaced Wijnaldum, and I think he does fit into that sort of, more all-round midfielder, a bit, it's someone to have in the engine room going forward and backwards, and we could use someone like that. But whether it would be Tolisso or whether Liverpool, decide to splash the cash rather than going in the free transfer market either this summer or next summer and go for a Bellingham, I think might be more likely. Because, like I say, Tolisso, he's had a poor injury record and he's not particularly lit the world on fire at Bayern Munich. You know, he's made 100-odd appearances and he's been a decent player for them, but I'm not sure he's quite the quality that Klopp will be looking to add to the squad at this point with the midfield options he's got available.
Okay, we've looked around Europe. I'm going to bring it back to the Premier League then. We've spoken about French international there in Tolisso. What about Paul Pogba? Couldn't happen, surely, could it? Or is it worth, when a player like that comes on the market, is it even worth the conversation from Jurgen Klopp, from Julian Ward, to sound about to see? I mean, Manchester City have confirmed that there's been interest from their end in Paul Pogba, but given that rivalry between Manchester United and Liverpool, it feels as though it's a non-starter completely, but equally the quality of the player in fits and starts, it has to be said. Surely it's worth at least a conversation.
I think City's also a very unlikely destination, but a far more likely destination than Anfield. He's just not a Jurgen Klopp player, is he? Really, he's far more suited to being in that Pep Guardiola midfield, where it is about flair and style and possession and keeping. He's not. I don't think he could. Of course, he could play at the tempo that Liverpool play at, but he'd never be able to keep up with the work off the ball. I think we've seen that at United. It's not something he wants to do. I think he's pretty much destined for Juventus as well. I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up back there. But I think, like you say, it is just a bit of a non-starter with him coming from the red side of Manchester. And there will have been a time when a lot of people would have said we'd have him. You know, he's had a great he performs for France. He had a great World Cup, but it's a lot easier when you got N'Golo Kante alongside you. Maybe if he was in alongside Thiago and Fabinho, he would shine. But he's another one who I think he's 29, wrong side of 26. He'd be coming from United, and he's just not a Jurgen Klopp sort of player at all, I don't think.
He's had 6 years in the Premier League, hasn't he? And I have to say, I still don't really know what his best is. He was very much, before he came back to the Premier League, a Twitter, a YouTube player who you'd go on and you'd see clips of and think he looks brilliant. There's been so much talk over 6 years of where his best position is within the Premier League, how he can function within a Premier League midfield. The left-hand side of a midfield three seems to be kind of the option that people fall on a lot of the time. That's Thiago's place in the team, though, isn't it? And you're not dropping Thiago for a player who, for much of his 6 years, has been nothing more than a prima donna at Old Trafford. And yeah, I think we'll move on from that one, as you say. It was one to throw in there. He's top of the list, isn't he, of high-profile names who are going on a free transfer. Final one I'm going to mention, an Anfield return for Luis Suarez. It feels the last few years he's been playing on these one-year contracts, and now this summer could eventually move on. Any chance?
I think if it was going to happen, it would have happened when he left Barcelona. It may not have been the best for the team at the time. I wanted him to come back to Liverpool when he left Barcelona, but now I think is he 35? He's not had. I think he got just under 15 goals this season. He's no longer returning 20-odd goals a season guaranteed. And I just don't really think, unless Mane and Salah were both to go in this summer, I don't really think Liverpool need another backup forward like that. Like, unless they're signing somebody to replace Mane to come straight into the team and to really challenge, I don't really think there's any point in them signing somebody who would essentially, at this point, he'd be coming in to replace Origi. He wouldn't be coming in to replace a Salah or a Mane, would he? And while it might be a nice story, it's another one that I just can't quite see happening.
No, most definitely. It does feel, though, doesn't it, that the free transfer market, just as we round off, if there's any kind of wild card shouts you want to throw out there, by all means you can. But it feels as though the free agent market, off the back of the pandemic and the impact it had on clubs being able to maybe offer out new contracts or pay big transfer fees, there was a bit of a fear for a while, it seemed, that a number of these big names would go. And perhaps other than Pogba this summer and Dybala to a lesser extent, that hasn't really played out. Of course, Kylian Mbappe's signed a new contract. I think Luka Modric was another player whose contract was running down. Maybe that due to the stage of his career he's at, but Real Madrid have managed to offer him a new deal as well. It did feel as though players were going to start to maybe begin to wind down their contracts. Maybe not so much the case now.
Yeah, seeing Mbappe go on a free anywhere would have just been bizarre, I think. PSG, they couldn't let him go. They got Qatari ownership, and they didn't want potentially the star boy, the poster boy for the 2022 World Cup, playing anywhere other than Paris Saint-Germain. So I don't think he was ever going to be able to run down his contract. And then, like you say, with Luka Modric, he's one that maybe could have been 50-50. I'm not sure when it was confirmed or how far into talks they were, but maybe if things had gone the other way and Liverpool had won in Paris, maybe Luka Modric might have found himself sort of on the way out at Madrid. But as it is, he's won a 5th European Cup there, and they've given him the contract extension that he definitely deserves. He's still playing unbelievably. But I think it's probably a symptom of, footballers getting fitter and fitter, playing longer and longer into their careers, that you're not seeing so many people in their early 30s running down a contract and going on a free because they're still producing to the best of their abilities and people are still wanting to sign them up for big money.
Yeah, no, most definitely. Well, if you've got any takes on who may well be on the free transfer market this summer that Liverpool should maybe take a look at, do let us know in the comments section below if you are watching on YouTube. If you're listening in on any of the podcast channels, once again, thank you for your continued support, and do give us a rating and review wherever it is you do listen to your audio on demand. But from myself, Guy Clarke and Edward Kay, thanks for your time and your company here on The Agenda. It's bye for now.